What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast presented by the Real Estate Cheat Code. I have Beth Matthews with us today from Envision Real Estate Group at Real Broker, all the way from Buffalo, New York. Beth, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to kind of work, jump on here with us and just to share your story, your real estate journey.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So, Beth, what we do on the Tell Me More podcast, I'm a big believer, and you know this being in the industry, that usually real estate's not the first career choice for a lot of us. Usually there's different career paths and all of that that play into the decision of us becoming a real estate agent. But before we ever get to that decision, right, we always start on our show from the very beginning. What was life like for you growing up? Did you grow up in Buffalo? Did you move there? What were some of your interest hobbies?
Yeah, so I moved to Buffalo when I was 9, and my father had been in the military, so we moved around a lot when I was a toddler. He got out of the Army, and then he had a career that moved us around a lot. So I say I was predisposed to be in real estate because I thought it was really normal to move every 2 to 3 years. So when we got to Buffalo and were pretty static until I turned 18, it felt strange. And my mother used to love to take me to open houses on the weekends. She just loved to check out homes. I studied architecture in high school and considered that as a career in college. So the stars kind of aligned through my journey in my college career, where I fell into real estate a little bit by accident. And I can share more about that journey, but I tell people if I hadn't kept going, I would have been part of the failure rate rather than the success rate. And John, I know you've shared your mission, which I love. So I think it's interesting how I went into real estate, then stepped out of it and returned several years later.
So I'm curious because, I interview a lot of agents, and, some agents kind of have that similar story of like maybe they were influenced with real estate early on, right? You mentioned your mom just loved kind of looking at houses, going to open houses, and maybe you didn't know it at the time, right? But maybe that helped pique some of your interest to do the architecture and all of that. But was there any did they have investment properties, or was it just simply that, just the love of layouts and all of those things of seeing houses?
It was the love of layouts. My mom had a dream of building a home at one point. I don't know that she's ever fulfilled the dream yet, but we would go to all the builders model homes, and then I would go home and I would sketch out floor plans and say, what do you think of this? And she would say, well, I want the kitchen sink to be over here, or I'd want this bedroom to be bigger. And I guess looking back, kind of a strange hobby for a preteen, but that's what I would do.
Yeah. So then you ultimately go to college. Did you go did you graduate?
I did. I took a very winding road. So I was at Buffalo State College studying public communications and journalism. I aspired to be the first female sports reporter, sideline sports reporter, and Aaron Andrews beat me to it. And then I met my ex-husband, and he was also in the military. And I did something wild and crazy, like left school with 2 semesters left to graduate and followed him down to Texas, which is ultimately when I first got my real estate license, because I was looking for something that I could do to earn a living while still having some flexibility to complete my degree. And I ultimately ended up with a business degree.
And you started real estate while down there. So were you doing both at the same time then?
I was, yeah. We built our first home, and so many people are like, oh my gosh, I would never build again. It was a terrible experience, but I really enjoyed the experience. I would go by the job site every day and check on things, and bring the guys coffee or water. And I think I got a few upgrades in that house that I didn't before. And then when the process was over, I was sad. And of course, I looked at the closing statement, and the builder was represented by an agent. And I saw the commission to the agent, and not knowing much more than just what I saw on paper, I went, I don't even know who this guy is. I couldn't pick him out of a crowd, and he just made that much money. I could do that.
Yeah. When you decided that, real estate was going to be, the next career path at that time, doubters, supporters, kind of where did people fall in your inner circle?
Well, the first go around, I think there was a lot of support, and candidly, I don't think I viewed it as a career. I had a mindset that maybe several people have, that, well, this seems pretty easy and I can sell a house here and there and make a lot of money and have all this free time to complete my degree. And the ultimate goal was to complete my degree, and I aspired to be a drug dealer, a pharmaceutical sales rep. And I did achieve that goal because I started out with a team. I was on a really productive team. I was having success. I was writing, a couple contracts a month. And then I was recruited away to another brokerage that was like, why are you giving a team lead 50% of everything you make? And when you're young and naive and maybe a little more, yeah, why am I? And so I left. And then 6 months later, I was out of the business because I hadn't learned how to actually build a book of business, how to prospect. I was being fed. And so looking back, I can say that it wasn't me giving the team lead 50% of everything I made. It was the team lead giving me 50% of everything they could have made. But that was a humbling experience and a great education.
Well, I honestly think that is one of the challenges. It's one of the realities and challenges for agents in our industry, right? And look, people that know my story, this is the first time we're connecting, so you really don't. I mean, I've been with the same team and team lead my whole career, and we're going on 13 years, right? And people are like, John, why don't you leave? Like, you helped build, the team that you're on and all those things. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand the other side of it. You don't understand, the stress of the expenses and the overhead and, the continuous of not just taking care of yourself, but then having to take care of, 5, 6, 10, we have a team of 43 agents right now. So, it's for you, what was it? Obviously the splits, right? That's a common conversation that, was big in our world. Looking back on it, your mindset was, it wasn't me giving 50%. Well, at the time it was, oh, I'm giving up my commission. But now looking back, it's actually, they were giving me their 50%.
Correct. Yeah. That team lead created a lot of opportunities for me that I didn't know how to generate myself. And unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. So 6 months later, you mentioned, so how long were you in real estate at that point?
So in the state of Texas, I sold for just shy of 3 years. And then my husband at the time was deployed. We had our first daughter. And I had completed my degree. So I returned home to Buffalo to get some support from family to put that degree to use, do all the things that I aspired to do. And when I was on maternity leave with my second daughter, I was like, this pharmaceutical sales thing, well, a coveted career, feels a bit like golden handcuffs. And there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes in terms of, where a product is positioned with an insurance company and things of that I was like, I don't know that I'm really moving the needle. And I didn't like that feeling. So I used that time to get my license in New York. And that's when I met a lot of resistance because I was leaving a fluent career with a company car and benefits and stability to go back to something that I had not succeeded at previously. And but I couldn't shake the idea that I needed to try again. So I asked for some support. I said, it's going to be a bit of a sacrifice for a little bit. But give me 2 years. Give me 2 years to try to make this work. And if I can't replace my income in real estate, I will give up the dream, but I have to try. So I worked both jobs. It ended up being 15 months before I was able to replace my pharma income exclusively from real estate and resign that position.
Well, it's interesting. I always tell people, a lot of times, and I help transition a lot of people into real estate from a different career, just how our team is set up and all of those things. And, a lot of times agents struggle. It's because we don't have a sales background. We don't have a marketing background, right? Like it usually is the second, third, fourth, fifth career choice. It usually is, I lost a job or I'm just tired of my work and I want something different. I want more time, freedom, flexibility, whatever it is. For me, I was a recent college kid and I didn't have, any sales background. I didn't have any experience. And for you, that second time around, I'm sure there's been some things that you learned during pharmaceutical sales, right? Techniques, tonality, scripts, conversations, right? Building relationships, all of those things that you were able to apply into real estate. Can you share something maybe that you took from that career that you then put in place the second time around that you didn't do maybe the first time?
Absolutely. And I probably go back a step even before my pharmaceutical sales career. When I was pursuing that role, right out of college, I had somebody look at my resume and they said, if you're going to get into pharma, you're going to need to have some outside business to business experience and get 6 months on your resume and then start applying. So I did take a job. I was going door to door to small and mid-sized businesses selling shipping services. And it is exactly as sexy as it sounds. It was brutal. But I had an amazing manager. And one of the things that she taught me is that I needed to learn to treat it like a game, and that every no was actually a win because every no got me closer to a yes. And so I really developed this kind of thick skin going door to door, making cold calls, that when I could reframe my mindset that no wasn't the end of the world, it was actually getting me closer to my goal. I ended up having success in that role. Didn't love it, gave it the 6 months that I needed to, and then used that as a catalyst to get into pharma. But sales, I think professional sales is an art form. And to have an experience, I worked for Procter & Gamble, which is largely a household name. They have phenomenal training. And I spent 6 weeks total going through sales training, learning how to take really complex ideas, because we had to read all the scientific studies and things of that nature and condense them into a message that was easy to deliver and easy for the physician standing across from me to understand in a really short amount of time. And I think that was another skill set that has translated well into real estate.
I want to go back to the first sales spot, because the way that was explained to you is exactly how I teach the agents that I coach, whether they're on my team or just in the business in general. And this is one of the things that I think I was fortunate to have early on, was to understand I built my business with internet leads, right? So door to door internet leads, right? It's just a numbers game. And you said it's just a game. How long for you did it take for you to really understand that it was just a game? Because I think that mentality is hard for a lot of agents to grab onto, because we don't like rejections, right? We don't like the no's. We don't like the disappointments. But the minute you can get your brain to say, hey, that's exactly what I'm supposed to get, that just gets me one step closer to the yes. For you, how long did it take within that? I think you said a 6-month window, but
yeah. So it probably took about 60 days. And where I had an advantage is my manager, the person leading me and training me, was leading by example. And she would crack me up. We would walk into, the reception area of a business, and there would be a sign clear as day that said no solicitation. And she'd walk right up and the receptionist would say, "Didn't you read the sign?" And she'd go, "Oh, I thought it said no smoking." "Great, that's bad for you anyway." And she would just it was like water off a duck's back. She made light of everything. And even though we rarely got the information we needed from the person at the front desk, the gatekeeper, if you will, she would then push a little bit to see how far she could take it. And what I found was, when she asked the same question the second or the third time, sometimes the barriers came down and we'd get more information. And if not, we'd go around to the back of the building. We'd find the shipping and receiving door. We'd knock on the door, walk in. And, those guys are usually just in the zone, not having a ton of interaction with people. So they were happy to tell us anything that we wanted to know. And when I realized that this is somebody that's just simply not going to take no for an answer, because she truly believed that we could provide a service to these people, I was like, yeah, we're here to help. Of course, you're going to want to talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, that's another key thing. You actually have to believe in the thing that we're doing, or the thing that we're providing as real estate agents, right? Like, I didn't get it early on, but there was an agent on my team that would always say, "Hey, we're changing lives," right? When we help someone buy a house or sell a house, hey, we're changing lives. And obviously I was 22, 23, 24 years old. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm here to sell houses and make some money, right?
Yeah.
But, then you get to this point in your career where it truly is, you got to really know that you're making an impact, or can make a large impact on people. And once you once you understand that, and you then understand that it is a game, right? That's what really can help you push through a lot of those rejections and those no's, and to keep going.
Yes.
So when you came back to Buffalo, right? You're running real estate side by side of your career. You said it took you 15 months to kind of build up that income on the side. I mean, I'm assuming that's a lot of hustle, right? Like, I mean, that's
Yes.
2 full-time jobs, right? Running side by side.
2 full-time jobs and 2 young children at home, and I needed to be really disciplined, and I needed to be incredibly organized, because I wanted my departure from pharma to be on my terms. I never wanted to leave my teammates high and dry. I never wanted the integrity of the company to be in question. So I separated everything. I had a company paid phone. I got a separate cell phone for real estate because I'd never wanted to take real estate calls while on the phone that the company was providing for me. So I would get up early and I would go to the office first thing. I'd be in the office usually 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I would spend about an hour on the phones. I called expired listings for sale by owners. I would do just cold calls of neighborhoods. And then I would go from 9 to about 4:30 and run my pharmaceutical sales position. And I was already dressed nicely. So in between doctor's offices, I would weave the neighborhoods. And if I saw a for sale by owner sign, I'd pull over, I'd jump out of the car, and I'd go knock on the door. So I was really like maximizing my time. And then I would go out in the evenings and weekends and meet with sellers or buyers and get deals under contract.
Did you do any, I'm just curious because of the first sales stint, did you do any actual legit door knocking, or was it just a for sale by owners?
Yep, I did. So anytime I did an open house, I would go door knock the neighborhood, and I still do that. It's interesting because I said recently, I'm tired of everybody saying, let's get back to basics, because we should really never get away from the basics, yet we do. The last few years, things were just rolling, and I won't say it was easy, but it was easier. And so I think whenever things are just flowing, we have a tendency to step away from the activities that got us here in the first place. And so I'm back to those activities because I also love the lead by example mentality. Most people learn by watching.
Yeah. I think that's it, right? I always say the apprenticeship model is and should be the model for anyone getting into the business. For me, that's exactly what I did. I was with my mentor and team lead every single day, even though it wasn't my business, right? It was his business that we were, doing things for. It just put me in real estate mindset more often, right? And more consistent day in and day out, which then allowed me to pick up things a lot quicker. I'm curious, for those first 15 months, was there any strategy involved this time around to going and getting the business, or was it just I'm in hustle mode, right? I'm on a mission to replace my other income as fast as possible so I can prove people wrong and I can take this leap of faith into real estate?
It was a little bit of both. Like I said, my schedule was really clearly defined because I had to maximize my time, and I didn't even know that like buying leads was a thing. It's never really been a part of my business. I did for a period of time buy some internet leads for some of my team members, and then I realized that I wasn't really doing them a service because I wasn't teaching them how to build their own business. And so we still do it on a smaller scale, but I am truly standing next to them on the phone saying, we're going to make these outbound calls. I would take any open house that somebody would give me because I knew that if I could get face to face with people, I had better success. And it's the same reason that I didn't hesitate to go knock on a door. And as much as it's a little nerve wracking, you have 1 or 2 wins and all of a sudden you're like, that wasn't so hard. I can do that.
Yeah. I mean, it just goes back to what you said earlier. You have to gamify anything that you do in real estate as far as prospecting goes. You have to gamify it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I literally tell people, I could never door knock. I never door knocked a day in my life. I could never do it. Just my personality is just not there. But I'm literally like, you have a 50-50 chance. It's either a renter or it's a homeowner. Like, 50-50 chance. And if it's a renter, you should go with this script. And if it's a homeowner, you should go with this script.
Yes.
right? And it's just how many doors you need to knock on to either get a buyer, that renter to become a buyer, or how many doors you need to knock on to get that homeowner to become a seller and buy again, right? It's just a numbers game. You just gamify it. I'm also curious about that transition period, because I think this is key, right? If we know that the average real estate agent transitions from a different career into real estate, for you, did you struggle with your sphere of influence around how they viewed you and your identity of what you were doing? Meaning, I see people struggle with getting their sphere or the people around them to understand, I'm no longer that person that did X. I am now this person that is a real estate agent. Did you have any struggles with that? And if
100%.
so, what were they? If not, how did you help position yourself as the go-to real estate expert instead of Beth, that does pharmaceutical sales?
It did take some time. And I was, as I shared, met with a lot of resistance from friends and family. I also had lost a lot of my sphere because I had lived out of state for 5 years. And Facebook, social media wasn't as prevalent then. I don't even think I got on Facebook until it was out for years. I was very resistant. And I found that most of my business when I first was pursuing the real estate career again came from people I didn't know. With the exception of my brother, who I've always been close with and has always had me on a little bit of a pedestal. He was one of my first buyers. However, most of my business came from somebody that didn't already know me. And I think that's oftentimes the case because the people in our world do have a perception of us. And even though the people in my world knew that historically I had been successful in the things that I tried, they also knew that real estate was one of those things that I had tried previously and struggled with. They also remember all the stupid stuff that you've done as a kid. And, so there's so much there that it can be hard for them to separate the two. And it was a little bit hurtful at first, where I was like, what do you mean you wouldn't pick me? But I used it to fuel me. And I was like, well, I'm going to show you. And then I started to have success and I started to share that success. And social media became a thing. I was actually one of the first in my market to create a team with a brand. Like I had a marketing person on staff. And when I was doing this in the 2009, 2010, that really wasn't a thing in Buffalo. So I learned how to leverage that kind of one-to-many audience, where next thing I knew, people were like, wow, I see you everywhere. And maybe they did, or but that was their perception.
Yeah. I didn't even ask, when did you get licensed in Buffalo?
I got licensed in Buffalo. I signed my paperwork 9909. So another reason there was a lot of resistance, because I was getting licensed end of 2008, beginning of 2009, when the market was not very good. And everyone's like, are you crazy? And maybe I was. However, my mentality was, if I can make it work when the market's not great, then I'll have longevity. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this to be my career.
I didn't know it at the time, but I got in 2011. So I got the tail end of some of that stuff. And for me, I cut my teeth on foreclosures and short sales. We had a portfolio of foreclosures that we were selling off for a bank. So I worked with a lot of investors and all of those things. And, looking back on that time now, I'm like so grateful, because you had to have hard conversations with people, right? I remember a lot of buyers that I helped that lost their home to a foreclosure or a short sale or a bankruptcy and all of those things. And you had to explain to them, you said it earlier, I had to complex things of drugs and simplify it for a doctor and for, the medical field to understand it. Right. Same thing. I had to explain to a buyer of why buying real estate again, after that experience that you just went through, losing your home or whatever the case may be, or a family member, of all these other negative things, it's still a great decision as long as we do it the right way this time.
Yes.
Right. And I'm not saying they did it the wrong way the last time, but maybe the education wasn't there. Maybe they didn't have the right agent. Maybe they didn't have the right loan officer, or whatever the case may be. And looking back on it now, I'm like, man, these conversations today are way easier than the conversations of sitting with a homeowner saying, hey, you got to bring $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to the table if you want to sell your house. Right. Or, hey, maybe the goal is we avoid foreclosure and we have to do a short sale so it's not as bad,
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful for that. And, 2009, obviously you're going through a market, and you mentioned that, you started to build a team, and that's really 2011, teams started to become the thing.
Yes. Yeah. I was probably about 2 years in when I started to build a team, and it started with an assistant. And, I read every book and I listened to anything that I could that would teach me. I was really keen on leveraging my time. I knew if I was paying somebody to do the administrative stuff, that I could turn that hourly rate that I paid them and quadruple it if I was prospecting and running appointments. And then I got to a point where I had more business than I could handle on my own. So it was then a crossroads of, am I going to take my foot off the gas, which isn't really in my nature? Am I going to minimize the level of service that I provide, which also didn't seem like a viable option? So then I was like, well, I'm going to have to bring people in and teach them how to do this at a level that is a representation of me. And then it started with a buyer's agent, and then two. And ultimately, by the time I launched my own brokerage, I had a team of 8, and then grew my brokerage to, I think at our peak, we were probably about the size of your team, John, just over 40 agents. And then over the last year, I started to scale some things back. I call it right sizing my business, because I recognized that the market was shifting, and the things that worked before weren't working now. And the agents that didn't want to adapt to that were going to have struggles and potentially bring the rest of us down. So it's been an interesting journey, but I've realized, wherever you start is not where you're going to finish, and you have to be willing to pivot.
Yeah, 100%. I got a couple questions about that period of time. Leverage. Did you always know you needed to do that? Did someone tell you? I find that to be one of the hardest things for real estate agents to do, and to actually let go of some of the aspects of our business. Was it hard for you?
It was, until it wasn't. When you find the right person and you realize that they can do it as well, if not better than you, all of a sudden you're like, man, I should have done this so long ago. I do think it can be painful if you don't find the right people. And some of that is trial and error. There are people that interview incredibly well, but then when they're in the seat, don't perform at the level that you expect. So the whole slow to hire, quick to fire, I was actually pretty quick to hire and quick to fire. So, I've learned over my career and my journey that making a decision, even if it's the wrong decision, is better than no decision. Because once you're down that path, you now have a new set of experiences and education on what it really takes. That if it's the wrong thing, then you pivot and you make a new decision. But just being stagnant is usually what gets people in trouble.
It's funny because we are say yes to hiring fast, and we just let them die slow, right? And I think, I explain this to a lot of team leads sometimes. It's like, by the time you finally make the decision to say yes to one agent, I've already brought 7 on, and have been able to determine who's the handful that will actually come and sell real estate, and take this as a true profession, right? Yeah. And others will just like the idea of being a real estate agent. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but I always tell team leads, I'm like, look, to me, you said people interview great. It's kind of like that tenant, right? They come to that open house or whatever, everything looks good on paper, and then it's month 4 and they stop paying. You just never know until you throw them into the fire. So I love that. And I'm also curious, you did the whole transition process, right? You went from individual agent to then building a team, to then building, your own independent brokerage. For you, can you touch a little bit on just your thought process as why you wanted to go and do your own thing from a brokerage level? Because obviously a lot of agents, they think that's the next step and the right step for them. I never had a desire to go and do our own thing. It seems like a lot of paperwork and headache.
Yeah.
Here's your thought process on that.
So in part because I always felt like that was the next step. And most of my life has been like, okay, what's next? So I always went into the second phase of my career, my take two, I call it, and said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this really well. I'm going to operate at an incredibly high level. And ultimately I'm going to start my own company. I was with a brokerage that I loved. They had moved into the Buffalo market from a neighboring city. They weren't really well known, but I found that I really enjoyed helping to build something. So coming in on the ground level, the organization was in total, I think they had 400 or 500 agents, yet it always felt like they knew everybody by name and what was going on in your world, in your business. And then they were acquired by a much larger broker. So when the acquisition happened, the much larger broker took me back to that feeling of things are a little bit corporate. I feel like I lost a lot of the things that I enjoyed about the brokerage that I had been with. But I gave it a year because I said, let's let the dust settle and see what this looks like. And a year came and went, and I sat down with my team and I said, what do you guys think? And they're like, we don't love it. We were basically operating independently. We had siloed ourselves. We had gotten all our own tools and technology because they didn't provide the things that we had had previously. And I said, well, at this point, maybe we just go do our own thing. And I had interviewed every broker that was available in my market that I knew of at the time. I had a spreadsheet because I look at apples to apples comparison, for lack of a better term. So I said, okay, I can go here and they'll give me this split, but I'll pay for X, Y, and Z. And so here will be the net. And when I looked across the board based off of the volume that we did, any place that we went, when I really quantified it, we were going to spend or give to the brokerage between $70,000 and $75,000 based off of our current production. And I had no problem with that. I have no problem spending the money if I'm getting the value in return. The challenge was I didn't feel like I was getting $70,000 or $75,000 worth of value.
Yeah.
Then I decided to invest that money into my own independent brokerage.
Looking back on it, did you love it?
There were points in time that I loved it. I won't say that I ever hated it because I think everything, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about myself, which has been something that I didn't expect in all of this. Is I have a great coach, and I was really struggling for months, back to that like pit in my stomach. Things didn't feel right. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And he encouraged me to go away for a weekend and disconnect. He's like, even if you have to check yourself into a hotel room, because then I want you to forget about everybody and everything except for Beth. Don't worry about the leases you have signed. Don't worry about the agents that you have. Like, just don't worry about any of it. Really get back to, when did you love this? What did you love about it? What do you see your life looking like in the future? And I had become the broker that was like, well, I'm supposed to be out of production. When you get to a level, you're supposed to back out of production. And when I sat down and really started to reflect on what I still love to do, I was able to categorize essentially 4 key pillars in my life. And one was, I love to sell. I still love meeting with clients. I still love building those relationships, knowing that I'm playing a role in a part of their life that usually has some emotion tied to it. I love to train and develop agents, and I can easily mirror those 2 things and have them work together. And then I was like, I had let my health go by the wayside. So I was like, I need to take better care of myself. And I want to be able to enjoy more time with my family, because I'd worked so many years to get myself to this position. And why would it matter if I wasn't doing things outside of work that I enjoyed? So that really forced me to come back to a decision of, well, what things can I delegate? What things can I hire out? And when I started to look at the dollars and cents of it, the cost of everything is continuing to go up. And the liability that falls back on a broker, not only as the professional, but a lot of times, like, I have personal guarantees on certain things as a new business owner. And I'm like, something goes sideways because one of my agents makes a mistake and my entire livelihood is on the line. Yeah. So for that reason, I decided that it was time to partner with a brokerage again and move back into the team lead mentality so that I could get back to doing what I really loved.
And when did you make that decision?
So I made the decision. I first started exploring it probably June or July of last year. Right. And the financials didn't quite add up at that time. I was like, I don't know if this makes financial sense.
Yeah.
And then as things started to unravel with the NAR stuff and, E&O insurance started to skyrocket and, just all of these indicators that, okay, it's probably going to get a little more challenging before it gets easier. I ultimately made the decision in January to make the transition. And we actually completed that transition about a month ago.
That's awesome. There's one thing in there that I want to, just touch on. And I actually had this conversation with my coach the other day, is you were not afraid to say, no, I actually want to step back into production, right? Because some people may be like, oh shit, like what's going on with Beth's life that she has to go sell again? Or, and I find that to be one of the most interesting things of agents and in general is I feel like a lot of times they're afraid to own exactly what their goals are. Like I always tell everyone, my goal as a personal agent was never to sell 50 plus houses a year. Like that was never my goal. My goal was like, hey, I want to sell 25 to 35 homes myself personally, right? Help build our agents up, go take 4 to 6 vacations a year, right? I didn't need the fancy cars or the big house or anything like that, right? Like, but I was comfortable in my own skin to say that was my lane.
Yeah.
And for you to go from this position of like, oh, I'm running this bigger, medium-sized brokerage, right? 40-ish agents. It's a lot. People that don't know, 40 agents is still a lot to manage, right?
Yeah.
On top of family, your own personal life, right? Your own clients sometimes, and everything else, and on the business side of things, to say, man, I'm actually going to set this aside a little bit, and I want to get back into the thing that I actually enjoy most about real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. There was, I had to check my ego for sure. And because you're accustomed to people being like, oh, you're a broker owner and you own this business. And yes, from the outside looking in, it seems very glamorous. And for some people it is. And I think this speaks to any entrepreneur, that there is an entire roller coaster of things that happens in the background that when I was forced to sit with myself, I was like, do I really care what the perception is? Because, most of these people don't know me well enough that I'm not that important. It was a little bit of like, first of all, who's really paying attention? And if they are, then I'm sorry, they're probably bored. But when I was like, do I really care what everybody else thinks? And was able to confidently say, no, the people that are closest to me, the people that are most important in my world know who I am. And that's my family, my kids. And my fiance was like, I think this is such a great move. I don't know that I've heard you laugh in like 6 months. And then all of a sudden making the decision was like, I feel like me again.
Yeah. That's awesome. I want to kind of dive into and switch gears a little bit and do a little bit more looking into the future, right? You just had this, change in brokerage. You're now with Real. We were kind of talking before, we hit record and, I'm with EXP and I'm all for, the rev share model. I've been with EXP since January of 2018. So, kind of been exposed, kind of where you're at with Real is where we were at with EXP, back then. And I think the way the industry's changing, the more people that we can have at rev share type brokerages, the better. So I want to kind of talk a little bit more, just where you see your business going in the future and kind of what you're looking forward to that, next few steps. What's kind of a goal? What are you looking forward to doing here in the next 12 months?
So the next 12 months, I'm looking forward to continuing to right size my business. And what I mean by that is as you bring on more agents, and John, you know this, then there needs to be more support. And more support typically means more salaries, and more salaries gets really expensive. So I started to realize that while I was growing, I actually wasn't scaling. I wasn't making any more money. I was taking on a lot more liability, a lot more work, a lot more overhead. And people enjoyed being in my world because they enjoyed the training and the mentorship that they received, but they'd reach a certain level and they'd feel like they needed to spread their wings. And I was like, I understand that, and I'm never one to hold anybody back. I tell the people that come into my world, I love you and I want to see you win. And if that's here, great. If it's somewhere else, fine. But it does start to take a a toll. It starts to become exhausting when you pour into people and you feel like you can't offer them that next step, but then you don't want to hold them back.
Yep.
So I love the idea of the rev share model, largely because it gives me an opportunity to help people grow and evolve in their respective careers and still giving them that next step and access to me where we can both benefit from it. So that's really exciting for me. I've had to make some decisions about, you mentioned we were mid-size, and we totally were, and it was a little bit of the messy middle. So I either needed to scale and get really big to make the numbers work, or I needed to go lean and mean. Yeah. And I started down a path of, we're going to scale really big. And it was very short-lived because I realized that the way I operate is at a very high level, and I have very high standards. And if I continued to try to scale to the level that I felt I needed to be profitable with all of the support, I was going to have to lessen my standards. And I'm not willing to do that. So now we're looking at, the ideal scenario would be 20 highly productive agents. I want the Green Berets. I want the Super Bowl contenders. I want the perfectly ripe avocados of real estate.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned a couple things there, right? There's a difference between growth and scale, and the second thing is, and this is where I help a lot of team leads, because this was us for the longest time, is a lot of teams are like, I want that 7 to 12-ish agent range. And it's kind of like what you're thinking and experiencing, right? It's like, it's this messy middle because, you two people, come on, you build them up, they leave. Now you're like, oh man, because you don't have enough people yet, bodies yet to kind of offset them leaving and replacing them. And I love that you're kind of getting clarity, for your business within that, because going, 30, 40, 50 plus 100 agents is not for everyone. Just like I always tell people, teams are not for everyone, right? There's brokerages that aren't for everyone. You got to find like what works for you. And then you just find the people that you really need to go out and attract to come to your team based off of what you're providing.
Yes, wholeheartedly. And don't worry about what it looks like to everybody else, because everyone's journey is unique.
What's a 5-year goal for you?
5-year goal is, so I have 2 children that are biologically mine. I have 2 daughters, and then I have 5 bonus boys. And our youngest children will be graduating from high school in 4 years. And while I love Western New York, it is my hometown, and I'm a huge Bills fan, I do not like winter. I do not like snow, and I know that's completely counterintuitive. So my goal is to operate a second team in a warmer climate, because our market is also very seasonal. So when it's cold and dreary, there's also not a lot happening in real estate. So it just continues to feel very gray and drab, where the opportunity to go into a market that the climate is better and usually the market is better during the winter months is something that's really appealing to me.
Is Real similar to EXP in the sense that it's one brokerage across the country?
It is, and that was one of the many reasons. To be able to hand off a lot of the operational stuff, a lot of the liability stuff, and also have the opportunity to operate anywhere in the United States and in most parts of Canada, because Buffalo, we're practically Canadian. I was like, this is great. I can actually fulfill my personal goals and be aligned with an organization that's going to support that.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the benefits of us as well, is that, ability to do it if you wanted to, right? And not have to worry about different market centers and all of that other stuff. Beth, what's a legacy goal for you?
Oh, I don't, you know what? It sounds really morbid, and I don't mean it to, but I've always said, for as long as I can remember, when I die, I want there to be so many people at my wake that said, this person had a positive impact on me. And I'm a no holds barred. I don't sugarcoat things. I always say I'm not nice. I'm kind. I will tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. So there are people that have, stormed out of my life and called me every name in the book, and then come back 2-3 years later and said, you were right. Thank
Yeah.
you for saying that. So my goal is always to make a positive impact and leave people better. And sometimes it takes a little while for them to realize that it came from a place of love, but they usually get there. And much like you, Jen, I know I love your mission, but we say internally that I improve lives and elevate the industry. And as a team lead, I try to do that one agent at a time.
Yeah. I love that. And I really do appreciate your time today. I got one final question for you. Um, what's one piece of advice that you could give our audience, maybe that you received early on in your career, maybe one that you give agents now from a leadership standpoint? If someone were to come to you and say, hey, Beth, give me one thing that I need to do, know, understand within real estate, what would that be?
Oh, there's so many. But I listen to Alex Hermosi, and one of the things that I hear him say frequently, and I think it is beneficial in any industry, but especially in real estate, is you have to learn to have a longer extinguish rate. Meaning there's going to be tough times. It's not easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it. And if you get derailed easily, the first no or the first deal that starts to go sideways or falls apart, then you're going to have a tough time. But if you learn to push past that and keep going, then there's huge opportunity in this space. And hindsight being 2020, if I had pushed through when I was in my early 20s instead of blaming everybody and everything, it was the market, it was that I didn't have a network, it was I could have been even further ahead than I am today. So keep going. Learn that that rejection is not the worst thing that happens.
I love that. Beth, thanks so much for today, sharing your story, your insights, your experience. Those that are watching, if you're a real estate agent anywhere in the country, Beth's Instagram is down below. If you guys are in Buffalo, New York, and you're thinking about buying, selling, or, an agent that maybe wants to join her organization, because you connected with her, make sure you guys reach out to her. But Beth, those that are listening into the audio version, what is the best way to stay connected with you, on Instagram or just in general?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. I'm Beth by a Billion, which is a nod to the Buffalo Bills, because even in their worst seasons, the crazy Bills Mafia fans would always go into every game saying the Bills are going to win by a billion. And truly, if I can be a resource to anybody, please connect with me. I get a lot of fulfillment out of helping others succeed. And I believe in collaboration over competition. So I'm an open book. I will tell you anything that I know. I will give you anything that I have that will help you succeed.
Beth, thanks so much. I appreciate you. And if I can do anything for you in return, please let me know. We always say over here, community over competition. So
Love it. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks so much.